Hello, this is Rachel, and I will be doing a presentation on Winds of Negol, a musical fable for wind ensemble by Michael Colgrass. In this presentation, I'm going to show you how Michael Colgrass effectively captures the narrative and themes of Carlos Cansadas, the teachings of Don Juan, in his composition Winds of Negol through his diverse use of instrumentation and use of programmaticism. And overall, what I want to go over is just how I think Michael Colgrass does a really good job of bringing this book to life through music, and how the different techniques he uses helps the listener better understand the indigenous spirituality and the transformative experiences Carlos had gone through. So, Winds of Negol is based on this book, The Teachings of Don Juan, and it's a non-fiction book, wink wink. Depends on who you ask, but the author of this book is Carlos Cansadas, and it's also from his point of view. And he's an anthropologist who is studying at the University of California, and he goes to Sonora, Mexico to do some field work for his master's thesis, and he's there to research hallucinogenic plants. And while he's there, he's at this bus stop with his friend, and his friend's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe, who do I see? I see this Indian guy, I need to introduce you. He's like a genius on hallucinogenic plants." And that's how he meets this mysterious Yaqui Indian. And after some convincing, Don Juan becomes Carlos's mentor, and together they have a 14-year apprenticeship. And during this apprenticeship, Don Juan teaches the ways of a Yaqui sorcerer and introduces him to a world of spiritual and mystical teachings. And he does this by introducing him to all of these hallucinogenic plants, specifically peyote. I hope I said that right. And introducing him to these plants, he also gets to experience the hallucinations that they give you. And he mentors Carlos on the non-ordinary reality and how peyote and other plants sacred to the Mexican Indians were used as gateways to mysteries of dread, clarity, and power. And he, yes, it's about hallucinations, and he does describe the different hallucinations that he goes through and the ones that he experiences, but it's also a lot about the different lessons and how these different plants, I can't explain it very well, but give you powers, and they can become your ally and your aid. And then there's also a topic on benefactors. I wish I could explain it better, but if it makes you feel better, there are times, if it makes me feel better to know that Carlos was confused at times as well. But overall, Carlos finds his inner creative self, known as the Negol. I wonder if you recognize that word. This is a quote from the person who wrote the foreword, and I think it describes the book really well. This is no mere recounting of hallucinatory experiences. Don Juan's subtle manipulations have guided the traveler, while his interpretations give meaning to the events that we, through the sorcerer's apprentice, have the opportunity to experience. And basically what Walter is saying here, it's like, it's not just him talking about how he hallucinates a lot, but it's about the way that Juan guided him. And yeah, I liked that quote. So, now the piece that I want to talk about. Winds of Negol, it's a tone poem, and obviously composed by Michael Colgrass, and it was commissioned by the New England Conservatory, and it's considered to be one of the greatest major works written for wind band in the 80s. I also think it's really cool. The way that my interest peaked was that I really liked Gardens of Dreams, and it's familiar to that in a lot of ways, but a little less nightmare and more spiritual, still a little creepy. I hope that makes sense to the person watching this. So I liked this quote because it talked about his objective while writing this. The listener need not have read Cansadas' book to enjoy the work, and I do not expect anyone to follow any exact scenario. My objective is to capture the mood and atmosphere created by the books and to convey a feeling of the relationship that develops as a teacher of ancient wisdom tries to cultivate heart in an analytical young man of the technological age. A lot of big words, but his goal is to capture the mood and atmosphere and also the bond that the teacher and the student create. And I think he does a really good job of that. And here are the techniques, well, some of the techniques that he uses to do that, to bring this story to life. So first of all, I wanted to talk about the instrumentation. I like to think that when writing this, Colgrass asked if there was any limitations to what the instrumentation could be, and the English Conservatory, the conservatory, they asked, no, I don't know why I got confused. He asked them if there was any limitations, and they said no, and he said bet, because it is a little wacky. Sorry about that confusion, I don't know why. It starts off with 2 alto flutes, which I thought was interesting. I don't know a lot about flutes, but I don't see that every day. But also no oboes, sorry Kelton. And he was a really big fan of all things contra, because there's a contra alto, a contra bass, and a contra bassoon. But no bassoon. I especially thought that was weird. And then there's not exactly a saxophone section. It's just a soprano sax and tenor sax. So sorry altos, but hello flugelhorn, because there's a lot of that. And there's a celeste, which is a keyboard instrument that plays bell-like tones, which was interesting. Why didn't he just do a piano? But I think it's very cool. Harp isn't very non-traditional, but I included it because I like the harp. And there's a crap ton of percussion, and which is cool because he's also a percussionist. And why did I click that? But I think this diverse use of instrumentation wasn't just him being silly goofy. I think it contributes to the surreal feeling of the hallucinations Carlos had experienced by creating a sound that you're just not used to. And by going against what's considered traditional, you create a truly unique experience, much like how in hallucinations your perception is altered. So it really feeds into not really know what to expect and hearing something that you're not used to. And I think that kind of brings out the hallucinatory, is that a word? Hallucinating feeling. Yeah, and we'll get to hear some of that in my next little bit when I talk about the programmatic indications. This piece is 25 minutes long, and there's more than 50 indications. I tried to count them all, but I lost count. But there's a lot. In the quote I showed earlier, he said he's not trying to show the book, go by the book specifically. You didn't even have to read it to be able to enjoy this. But even though he says that, he still had a lot of indications that he went by. And what the really cool part is that he followed all of these indications really accurately. And I'm going to show some examples of that. And one thing I'd like to notice is how specific they are. And if you think about the length of this piece and how many there are, there's multiple per minute. And that's a lot. And so yeah, let's talk about some of these indications specifically in the first movement. So I'm going to start. I'm really hoping there's not an ad. Okay, cool. But we're going to start off with Don Juan emerges from the mountains. One thing, let's just listen to it real quick. Okay, cool. I think that brings my point out. So I really love the melody and the low brass. And that I think it shows this is Don Juan's theme, and it shows how mysterious he is. He's not just he's not just like a professional at another school. He's a mysterious guy. He really pushes Don Juan, and he believes in the spiritual stuff. And if you doubt it, he's gonna get upset at you. And I think the melody and the low brass and the darkness really just showed that. And now I'm gonna go to talk about Carlos a little bit, and specifically Carlos' approaches. He's unsure of himself, a new concept of himself. So this is all about Carlos. So I'm just gonna start at Carlos' approaches. And play. So so that clarinet solo, I liked how optimistic, like I don't know if I hummed that correctly, but just like the little jumps, I think it showed his optimism and his curiosity and wanting to get to know who Don Juan is. And I remember specifically in the book, he was kind of talking. Carlos was kind of talking to Don Juan as if he knew more than him, and I just liked. The next part is unsure of him. Is labeled Carlos is unsure of himself, and I think he depicts that really well, and I'm excited for you to listen to it real quick. Here's the music for that also. So yeah, so all of a sudden he's talking to Juan, and he realizes, I have no idea what I'm talking about. And I think the rush and the drag and the different dynamics and all the change shows how like hesitant he is, and how he's starting to get a little doubtful. And yeah, I definitely see Carlos being represented in the clarinet solo. And for time's sake, I think I'm gonna have to skip the next indication, but it has a cool little flute solo, and it's just a different sound, and I liked that. Okay, Don Gero, he's a trickster. He's another sorcerer, and I specifically wanted to show two things. So he's like a clown. Let's just hear some of that. So yeah, it's giving circus. I love the trombone in that, and the kind of like very chaotic and silly. And for time's sake, I'm gonna go straight towards I hope I say it genre laughing. Here we go. Next. Here's this. Guess why? I don't know. Just listen, actually. So yeah, it quite literally sounds like laughing, and he does this throughout the entire piece of actually following these indications quite strictly. And if you'll even look, another one I was going to show but no time is Juan jolts Carlos awake with a shrill voice. This clarinet quite literally just screams as much as a clarinet can, and the conversation is going back and forth between the brass and the woodwind as if it's a conversation between the instruments, much like how Carlos and Juan were having a conversation. And overall, the book is really enjoyable. The piece is really enjoyable. I actually have a weird fear of hallucinations, but it kind of made me more interested in this piece. And but I liked how this book talked about just overcoming your fears. And this quote I liked is, "Fear is the first natural enemy a man must overcome on his path to knowledge." And that's from Don Juan himself. You can figure out for yourself if you think this is a true story or not. But yeah, go listen to the rest of the piece. I really liked it. And thank you for listening. And these are my sources. Okay, thanks.